Good afternoon. It's so lovely to be here and see so many people I know in the crowd. Many of you are just as deserving of this honor. So, hello, friends. I want to thank John for that wonderful introduction, and especially thank the ASBMB for the William C. Rose Award. It is a great honor for me. I started out my faculty career just over 25 years ago as a lone biochemist in a chemistry department at St. Mary's College of Maryland, a public, primarily undergraduate institution, about a 2 hours drive from here in a part of Maryland you may never have been to unless you're actually trying to get there. We're way at the end. You can see a picture of the waterfront of our campus over here, or in the next slide, sorry, I'm looking at presenter view, but I'll show you. We're on the waterfront as far down as you could go on the western shore of the Chesapeake Bay, not the eastern shore. As John mentioned, I was hired to start a biochemistry program in a chemistry department. This included ordering equipment to teach biochemistry lab courses and designing all the experiments for those courses. I remember asking a faculty member in biology for advice on pipetteman and SDS page and Western blot systems, as I had no idea how to order these things, but suddenly it was my job. I was basically building labs from scratch. In fall 2024, 25 years after I started at St. Mary's, we opened a dedicated biochemistry lab space with new equipment. That's the photo you see here on the right in a brand new beautiful space that has a tissue culture room, a dedicated prep room, a new research lab, and a beautiful teaching lab. It took 25 years, but it finally happened while I was still there. I played a big role in planning for those spaces. Before we shared labs, we're a small public school. Before we shared spaces with the Gen Chem lab, sometimes with upper level labs, and when I first started, they even had me teaching in a plant lab in the biology department. So I made a first win when I at least got a lab space in the chem department. There's been a lot of wins over the years. The image on the left on this slide is an aerial view of the college, as I mentioned, which is on the waterfront of the St. Mary's River. We're a small Division III school, except for sailing, where we often are winners, believe it or not, in Division I against schools like Yale and Harvard. We have some amazing sailors. The middle image you see on this slide is a replica of the Ark and the Dove, the ship that brought the first English settlers to start a colony in Maryland at historic St. Mary's City, right next door to the college, and that's where the name actually comes from. The biochemistry major grew at St. Mary's, and we later gained a second biochemistry professor. I was grateful for another biochemist to help teach and improve the curriculum, and frankly, just speak the language that I was speaking, trying amongst all my fellow chemists. As John mentioned, I led efforts for ASBMB accreditation of our program, which was achieved in 2016. Along the way, there was a number of curriculum changes, and I want to highlight a few here. A paper was published in BAMBID on semester-long collaborative writing projects that I wrote with Craig Strew, who is now at Albion College, that we still do in the Biochemistry 1 and 2 lecture courses. In Biochem 1, the students work on a putative bioinformatics project studying a putative protein. We've changed that up over the years. They now use AlphaFold. Clearly, they weren't using that when this paper was published, but we have tried to keep the project up to date. In the second semester, my students work on a grant proposal project in Biochemistry 2. That's happening right now. On Wednesday, when I return, their research methods of their proposals are due, and I have our grants director coming in to give a workshop on grant budgets. So that has been a successful project for many years. I have special pride in this paper, though, in BAMBID, because in my entire career, whether it was education or research-based papers, this is the only paper I submitted and got back a response saying it was accepted with 0 revisions. I don't know if that will ever... Yeah. The fact that it was a writing paper and that happened, and I was writing about writing projects, I thought was really kind of interesting, right? But at any rate, it's a special pride. The other publication here was a paper we published in the Journal of Chemical Education on a multi-week research-based lab where students synthesized a putative tyrosinase inhibitor and tested it in Biochemistry 1. It was quite ambitious as the students were doing organic synthesis, again in the Gen Chem lab, with limited fume hoods, and in addition they were doing enzyme kinetic studies. And so we did that project for many years. Both of these manuscripts involved department colleagues working on projects together and were my first experiences collaborating on education initiatives that resulted in peer-reviewed publications. Fast forward a number of years, and in 2017, our department, the Chemistry and Biochemistry Department, along with psychology, became part of the NSF-funded Council of Undergraduate Research Transformations Project. We were one of 12 institutions selected and had 2 consultants, Kim Frederick and Bridget Gurley, and they helped us in a 6-year project transform our curriculum and implement research experiences throughout the curriculum. The photo you see here is when the project first got started with members of the department, as well as administrators, and one of our collaborators in the front, which is Bridget Gurley right here. I was trying to figure out where Kim was. Maybe she took the photo, because she was there that day. And we owe a lot to both of them for all of their aid with that project. I was a co-leader for our department, and at the time I also served as department chair, so I played an instrumental role in carving out dedicated time for this project. The workload was substantial. I also talked to our provost to make sure he appreciated what we were doing, that this curriculum work was really important, and that he should give credit to my faculty for doing the work. In other words, think about accounting as service or something, because this was a big project that we were taking on. He did write a letter that faculty used in their tenure and promotion files to show that what we were doing was meaningful and substantial work. This was overall a really amazing experience. We met the goal of scaffolding research experiences throughout our curricula for both biochemistry and chemistry majors. Our department accomplished a lot, and I'll build on that a little bit in the next slide. Some of our work was featured in the book shown here that was written by the grant PIs on transforming academic culture and curriculum. In addition to scaffolding research skills throughout our curricula for chemistry and biochemistry majors, we also revised our program learning outcomes, and we scaffolded cognate skills, including communication, both written and oral, information literacy, and collaboration. The manuscript here you see that was published in BAMBID shows the collaboration skill aspect in that this paper talks about contracts and rubrics that we use in some of our courses. In addition to scaffolding all the skills, in addition to scaffolding the research, we also created a new assessment system based on signature projects and a longitudinal rubric we call the Megalo rubric. Why the Megalo rubric? We live in an area where there used to be megalodon sharks, and a really popular pastime in my area is to go to some of the local beaches and actually look for shark's teeth. The megalodon teeth, they're like this big. That's the winner. That's the treasure you're really trying to find, but there's lots of other shark teeth too. So anyway, we named the Megalo rubric after that, and we published the details of our new assessment system in the paper you see here, Research and Practice in Assessment. We also developed a professional skills curriculum that includes items like personal statements, cover letters, resumes, and presenting poster presentations. Development of this curriculum was the inspiration to organize an American Chemical Society symposium on this topic and write a symposium book. I was one of the symposium organizers along with Kelly Nealis and Shannon Shear, and I served as a book editor for the symposium book. I was also co-author on the chapter titles you see here, including a call to action chapter. This book was actually a bestseller for ACS in 2021. How do I know that? We got a little bit of money. Normally you do this, you don't get any money from ACS. But because they actually made money off of it, we got a really nice letter, and the editors got to share some of the money. It was small. It was really small. With the support of NSF and our consultants and interactions with faculty at the other 11 institutions, the Career Transformations Project is an example of how a collaborative group can work together to implement major curricular changes that better support our students. As I was developing as a faculty member at my college and building the biochemistry program, I became involved in the ASBMB education community, especially after the 2011 biannual ASBMB education meeting held at the University of Richmond. Soon after that conference finished, I reached out to Ellis Bell, and I asked if I could become more involved in the ASBMB RCN UBE project, which I'd heard a lot about at the conference. This was the project that developed the foundational concepts and skills of molecular life scientists. Soon after that request, Ellis emailed me back, and he asked me to host a workshop at St. Mary's, which was not quite what I was honestly expecting. Later, he invited me to join the steering committee of the project. And I ended up running a bunch of workshops at multiple institutions all over the US, along with some of you in the room, by the way. As many of you know, this is not an atypical path when it comes to interacting with Ellis. Maybe some of you in the audience have similar stories where Ellis asked you to be involved in something, and you ended up doing more than you were expecting. For me, it was the first time I was involved in an education-focused project at the national level, and I really enjoyed working with faculty from different institutions. The paper you see here is a paper I published with Anna Guano, Deborah Martin, and Ellis Bell, where we did a comparison of capstone projects across the US as part of BMB majors. Ellis Bell, sorry again, it's all about Ellis, right? All roads go back to Ellis. Ellis Bell was stepping down as the Southeast Regional Director for ASBMB's the Undergraduate Affiliate Network, now known as Student Chapters, and Marilee Benor, who was chairing the steering committee, called me to ask if I would take his place. And that's how my involvement with Student Chapters began. I served as a regional director for 2 terms, and then as chair of the steering committee for 5 years. I helped start Catalyst Conversations, although I couldn't actually attend the first one, as a storm came and a tree came down over my driveway. I'm not even kidding. So I didn't get to go to that first conference. I played a major role in making the student chapter reception at the national meetings more inclusive to all undergrad faculty, not just student chapter advisors. And I've also played a role on numerous committees, because as many of you know, Student Chapters gives out a lot of different awards to support undergraduates. So I served on many of those committees over the years. I'm very grateful for my years serving on the Student Chapters Steering Committee and all the dedicated chapter advisors, regional directors, and ASBMB staff I was fortunate to interact with. The photo you see here on the slide is from the Student Chapters reception at the 2022 ASBMB meeting in Philadelphia, the first ASBMB meeting post-pandemic, and we were so very happy to see each other, as you can see in this slide. We were so grateful to be in person again. I'm grateful for many ASBMB projects and initiatives that I had the opportunity to be involved in, including facilitating conference sessions for the ASBMB summer education meetings, transforming undergraduate education in the molecular life sciences, especially serving as one of the 4 organizers for the 2023 Suffolk Conference. The top photo you see here is of all participants at the conference, and the bottom photo is with my amazing co-organizers, Tayo, Celeste, and Joe. This was a lot of work, but it was a great project. We had a lot of fun while we did it, and it was one of the best things I've done. If you don't know about the TUMLS meetings, these take place every other summer. They're small, usually around 100 faculty, with postdocs and sometimes some grad students participating. And it's a really great place to meet other people who are very passionate about BMB education. I've met many colleagues at these meetings over the years that are now close friends. For the 2023 conference, we obtained an NSF grant to increase access in terms of participants in the form of registration, travel, and parental care awards. One of the highlights of this conference was bringing together 7 NSF-funded education networks who gave presentations on their projects to create awareness and increase faculty involvement in these active learning, inclusive, and impactful teaching practices. In our meeting report, which you see here, which published in BAMBID, We advocate for the importance of NSF funding to support these types of education communities moving forward. I've served on other ASBMB committees, such as the Program Certification Committee and a recent Strategic Planning Committee. I'm currently serving on the ASBMB Nominating Committee and a Professional Development Working Group that's part of the new strategic plan. Why do I continue to be so involved in all this committee work? I've always been impressed by the faculty volunteers who have contributed their time to help make ASBMB our professional society. And I appreciate interacting with colleagues at other institutions to reinforce the value of the work I am doing on my home campus and give me important perspectives external to my institution. I now want to talk about 2 additional national communities for education that I have been a part of beyond ASBMB. Both were featured at the 2023 ASBMB Summer Education Meeting that I mentioned. The first one, BioMolViz, was a community I became involved with during the COVID-19 pandemic. This started with a virtual workshop in December 2020 when I was on sabbatical. Not the sabbatical I hoped and dreamed of, especially having just served 4 years as department chair, as I was at home with my son doing middle school online and my husband also working virtually. I was basically desperate for any kind of professional interaction. BioMolViz was, like I said, I did this workshop and I started to become super involved. BioMolViz is a community that promotes biomolecular visualization literacy, a project I am passionate about. In this community, I transitioned from that initial workshop participant to a working group member, and then later I became a member of the steering committee and now serve as an associate director. This demonstrates a few of the core hallmarks of the BioMolViz community of practice, a culture of recognition and support, as well as leadership opportunities. Here are some images representing some of our projects. The BioMolViz library houses visualization assessments and answer keys that instructors can freely use. This work came out of a lot of those workshops that I mentioned. There's also 2 journal publications featured here that I was involved in. The first one is an article on comparing faculty versus student perceptions of biomolecular visualization assessments, and the second article is on classroom testing of our assessments and student interviews of their experience working with these assessments. On the right, you see our most recent publication called Seeing the Invisible, Learning to Teach with Biomolecular Visualization. This is an open education resource and features training activities for 4 popular molecular modeling programs: PyMol, Chimera X, MolStar, and ICN 3D. We really had a lot of fun writing this, by the way. We did it this past summer. Talk to anybody. There's a lot of us who were involved in this. It was a super fun project. More recently, I became involved in the malate dehydrogenase cures community. I was a member of the 2023 faculty cohort, and I now serve as a faculty mentor. This has been another very supportive community that helped me to develop a cure, a course-based undergraduate research experience for the Biochemistry 1 lab course at St. Mary's. They helped by providing training, advice, supplies, professional development, and even a small equipment grant. Research amongst MCC members is very collaborative, and I was able to be involved in the publication you see here, which features malate dehydrogenases regulation by phosphorylation. I just want to point out details about these 2 images in terms of the photos. Here you see me with some of the best lab partners ever. Kathleen Cornley and Elena are here in the office, or here in the audience, I believe. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. This is one of the professional development opportunities, and I did this in 2024, and this is the whole group that participated in that, as well as the cohort at that time, the new cohort for their training. I do want to make a plug that the MCC community is currently recruiting the 2026 faculty cohort. So come see our poster tonight if you're interested. It's poster 19. I've taken you through education-focused projects at both the department level and the national level that have been transformative for me professionally. I have accomplished more with the help of others than I ever could have done alone. Working with various communities has also provided me with incredibly supportive colleagues and friends, particularly at times when I most needed that support. Here are my main take-home points based on my experiences. Engage with the communities who share your goals and passions. Is there a group that you can join or start? One partner in your area of interest can make a huge difference. Gaining a second biochemist in our department was a game changer for me. Departments can pull together and do great things to change curriculum, especially if you have buy-in and support, and it happens at the right time with the right people. When you're offered an opportunity that seems like a growth step for engagement and collaboration, take it. I often pause and I overthink and I say, can I do this? Do I have time to do this? But in the end, I'm so grateful I said yes to many professional opportunities. And finally, work collaboratively to build communities where everyone thrives. I have so many examples from ASBMB, BioMolViz, and MCC that have demonstrated to me how important diverse communities are, where everyone is valued for their contributions. I have so many people to thank who helped me get on this stage. First, John Tanzi for the lovely intro and nominating me for this award, as well as any others who were involved, including Dr. Andy Koch from St. Mary's. And thank you again, ASBMB. My PhD advisor, Frank Rusnak, who took me to my first ASBMB meeting in San Francisco when I was a third-year grad student. My postdoctoral advisor, Don Smith. For my postdoc, I had a Camille and Henry Dreyfus Fellowship. The intent of these fellowships was to take recent grad students who had achieved their PhD and allow them to gain additional research experience as well as teaching experience. So Don let me sit in on all his biochemistry courses for an entire year so I could observe how he taught biochemistry, and I was able to teach some contemporary and general chemistry courses while I was a postdoc to get that key experience for teaching. Don was also really involved in ASBMB, and at the time I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it because I was a postdoc, it was a 2-year position, I needed to be thinking about the next step, where am I going to get a job? That's, even in my second year as postdoc. But he made an impression on me because he was so involved in ASB committee work that I think later in my career, it planted a seed that I eventually came back to. So I appreciate how involved he was once upon a time in ASBMB. I want to thank my department, past and current members, especially Paul Blanchette, who took a chance and hired me to build an entire program. Thank you to my collaborators from ASBMB, BioMolViz, and MCC, especially all my student chapter committee members, and a special thanks to Marilee Benor, Anna Guano, and Quinn Vega, former chairs of the steering committee of student chapters that I had the fortunate opportunity to work with. Special thanks to Ellis Bell and Joe Provost, who have inspired so many of us and involved us in their national projects. And finally, thanks to NSF. You may have noticed that many of the national projects I worked on were funded by NSF. It is so critical to have this funding moving forward to support networks and education initiatives. We need to do all we can to try to make sure that actually happens. This is a tough one, guys. My parents are no longer here. Finally, I want to dedicate this talk to my first teachers, my parents, Jacob and Doris Mertz. I'm first gen, but they believed in me even when I doubted myself in grad school and when I was thinking about quitting 4 years in. I had a project I was working on that got scooped, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this much longer. I remember phoning my parents and telling them, and they were devastated. I didn't even know they cared that much about it. I mean, they never went to college. It meant so much for me to finish. I finished. And I thank them for that, because it was a really tough time. I also like to think that my father gave me the teaching gene. He was a beloved Sunday school teacher, and I hope I got it from him. I also want to thank my dad, who lived out of state in Pennsylvania, but asked on almost every visit, "How are your students?" My husband, Jonathan, my son, Nate, who are sitting over here, for all their support and who are here with me today. All the students I have had the honor of teaching over the years. Thanks to all of you finally for being here. Many of you have been here for me in countless ways beyond today. Thank you. You have my deepest gratitude.